We all set, Jay? Oop, we lost Jay.
You're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Town of South Kingstown Planning Board. This is our regular meeting. The date is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, and time is 7 o'clock. First item on our agenda is the roll call. So Pam, please take the roll.
Yes, indeed. Paul Jordan,
Here.
Peter DiStefano,
Here.
Susan Axelrod,
Here.
Joe Murphy,
Here.
Maria Mack,
Here.
Steve Tomasi,
Here.
Pam Rubinoff here. And let's go through staff. Jamie Rabbit,
Present.
Jay Parker,
Here.
Brian Wagner,
Here.
Rich Bourbonnais,
Here.
and Amy Coyne, Special Legal Counsel.
This is Amy. I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Next item is our consent agenda, and we have the approval of minutes for January 7th, 2021 special session, January 12th, 2021 work session, January 14th, 2021 a special session, and January 26th, 2021 a regular session. If everybody's in agreement with those minutes, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of consent agenda.
We have a motion by Maria. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second by Pam. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion's unanimous. Okay. Next item, we have a minor subdivision pre-app conceptual plan for the Correo minor subdivision on 41-5 Middlebridge Road. Do we have anyone here representing the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Eric Prevey. I'm a registered professional engineer with Deprete Engineering. Offices at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island.
Okay,
Would you like me to just go through the presentation?
yes, I would.
So with me tonight also actually on the call are the Correos, Dr. William Correo and Carol Correo, the owners of the property, and then also Scott Correo as well, and John Carter as well.
Eric, I see John, but I don't see the Correos.
Okay, if they happen to pop on, then maybe if you can at some point, Jay, I'm not sure that they'll be if they logged in with their name or how they did it, but
Okay.
should be okay either way with the pre-application. I'll just keep going if you happen to see them. So the property is located at 415 Middlebridge Road. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Jay. The property is located at 415 Middlebridge Road. It's Assessor's Plat 43-1, Lot 7. It's a 3.13 acre parcel. It's zoned R20, so 20,000 square feet per lot. There is an existing, I'm just going to draw on here. There we go. There's an existing home on the property. So here's the 415 Middlebridge Road right here. There's a driveway that comes in directly off of Middlebridge Road here, has a small circular driveway here, also goes to the garage. Just real quickly, to note on here, north is actually showing to the left on these plans because it fit on the page better. So there is a coastal wetland feature, so a coastal feature that's located along the eastern side of the property here. So you can see that's with the wetland flag series located along here. So that is a coastal feature associated. It's a wetland that's associated with the Narrow River along here as well. There's an existing dock as well. The property itself also has, you can see the tree line on here. The tree line goes right to the edge of the coastal feature today. So this is all a grass yard associated with the property here. So all grass associated with the existing home itself today. This area is serviced by municipal water and sewer directly in Middlebridge Road here. There's a gravity sewer line that's directly in front of the property. The existing home is serviced by the gravity sewer. There was also one additional stub that was already pre put onto the property It's approximately right here in this location as well for a stub here. As I mentioned, there's also public water in this area. This area also is within the FEMA 100-year floodplain. It's a zone AE, so elevation 11 in this area as well. Go into the proposed plan. I'm not sure if I'm able to get to that proposed plan, Jay. Hold on. Perfect, thank you. So the proposed is for 2 additional lots. So it's a 3-lot subdivision. So 2 additional lots. The existing home would remain on the property and meet all of the setbacks. We're not requesting any relief or any variances on here. So the existing home itself will continue to have the required minimum side yard setback on here. Every lot would have the minimum of 20,000 square feet suitable area per lot. So obviously, as I mentioned, there is a wetland feature. There's a coastal feature along here. So the 20,000 is exclusive of that wetland. So it's all this upland portion over here. Each of the lots has the required minimum 100 feet of frontage along Middle Bridge Road as well here. As I mentioned, this area is serviced by municipal water and sewer. These proposed homes would utilize that. So they are proposed as municipal sewer, municipal water in this area, tying directly in. The stormwater for the site, actually we have the driveways, hold on a second, driveway shown directly on here as well. The stormwater is proposed to be as using infiltration dry wells for the roof runoff. So taking the roof, putting it directly and infiltrating it directly on the site here. So we have those demarcated. Again, this is a pre-app level, but we wanted to generally show what we're thinking in this area. So we have a dry well there, and then we also have a dry well that's located here for lot number 3. And then the roof, and then the driveways would have driveway infiltration trenches along here as well. So those would be directly infiltrating right on site here as well. And we do have small turnarounds here so that there wouldn't have to be any backing out onto Middle Bridge Road. This area is within CRMC's special area management plan for the Narrow River. So we will also need to be getting a CRMC assent at the end of the process. Also, as part of that CRMC, we would envision that with the CRMC permitting, that a conservation easement typically has been required from CRMC as part of the permitting process. So this would be under a conservation easement upon final permitting with CRMC. This is as I mentioned, the pre-application process. I think sometimes it was noted in the staff report that sometimes minor subdivisions that don't require any variances or relief and have road frontage. We're not proposing a new road at all. It has legal frontage already on Middle Bridge Road. Sometimes they don't come for a pre-app. It could go right to a preliminary plan stage at times, but also wanted to get feedback from the board in advance here before we came back with preliminary as well. So that's kind of my general introduction of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions from board members?
I have one.
Go ahead,
Mr. Privy, given the fact that this is within the Narrow River watershed, have you thought at all about trying to protect the integrity of such with future homeowners, say any limitations on pesticide or herbicide use?
We haven't specifically discussed that yet. At the same point, I think that would be something that would be that CRMC would also be talking about at that point. Actually, I forgot kind of a pretty major point on this, so I apologize. This, as I mentioned, the tree line today is approximately right along the coastal feature here. The area within 50 feet of this coastal feature would all be replanted and reestablished as a vegetated buffer zone in here. So that would be now recapturing an area that is currently lawn today that would be vegetated as well. I forgot that's kind of a major feature to forget there, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so this will all be revegetated and reestablished as part of the CRMC permitting process as well. So haven't fully Ms. Mack, we have not fully discussed that, but I would envision that CRMC would also have some sort of discussion like that as well.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Susan?
Privy, this is Susan. Had you considered doing a shared driveway?
We hadn't. It's something that we can talk about with the owners as well. It may make sense in this application. So yeah, it's something to consider for sure.
Typically, we do ask for those quite often in cases like this. And to Susan's point, because they're so close together,
Yep.
it seems like it would be better to combine them. I don't know if Rich has any comment about the curb cuts along that part of Middle Bridge Road, but that is in the vicinity of where Torrey Road comes down, so.
It is, but we've installed a stop sign there recently. And so traffic is slowing down through that area as it comes up to the stop sign.
Okay.
Also across the street from this is a land trust property. It's vacant. So I'm not necessarily too concerned about driveways, although, we always prefer that it would be a shared driveway, just fewer curb cuts, the better, so.
Okay. Any comments from staff?
Mr. Chairman, our only primary one, and it may be something the applicants considered, is the northernmost lot and the proximity of that turnaround and the functionality of that long-term, basically right on the property line.
Well, that might have to be switched if they do the combined driveway.
Could you please just restate that, Mr. Rabbit? I apologize. I kind of missed a piece of that there. What was
Eric, that northernmost lot, which has a southern jug handle to it for its turnaround, is
Gotcha. Okay.
on the property line. If you have the ability to slide
Got it.
infrastructure north,
Yeah, we could look at that. Yeah, we could always possibly put the hammerhead, I call it a hammer, whatever, the turnaround. We could look at it and go into this side over here as well. Yep, that's certainly something to consider.
Okay. And Jamie, as this project moves forward, do we have to have a public hearing because it's asking for no waivers and there's no street creation?
I'm not aware of any requirement for a public hearing.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, this is Jay Parker. This is a straightforward minor subdivision with no waivers, so there is no.
all right. Well, I was just curious because typically that goes to the planning department and unless there is an issue, they usually move it along. If there's an issue, they usually refer it to the planning board. So that why I was asking the question. So. Okay, Mr. Prevey, do you have any questions of the board?
We just wanted to, like I said, when sometimes with the minor subdivisions, it's just helpful to get the early feedback from the planning board and just make sure there wasn't something that was kind of an aha moment. I'd prefer to have the feedback before we go and officially engineer it. So appreciate the feedback that was given tonight.
Well, we appreciate that as well. And you heard the comments from Maria about the CRMC maybe and the combined driveway. So
Yep.
we'll see you in the future.
Excellent. Thanks for your time tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along. Next item on our agenda is major land development project pre-app conceptual plan for the South County Post and Beam on 551 Liberty Lane, West Kingston. We have anybody representing the applicant, Jay?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, they're coming in as we speak.
Hi, good evening. David Russo, professional engineer with DePrete Engineering, representing the applicant, South County Post and Beam. I don't know if they're present, Jay, if you can let them in.
Josh and, sorry, Josh and Ken.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Do you want, does Jenna want to come in as well?
No, it's all set.
Okay.
So we're here tonight for a pre-application for a major land development project located on AP 21-2, lot 21. The site has a total acreage of 6.3 acres. It's a industrial zone property. It has frontage on Liberty Lane and Fairgrounds Road. You can see it has 2 points of frontage. There's a existing building located on the southern tip of the site, off of Liberty Lane. And
David.
Yep.
David, I just gave you control of my mouse. If you pick up your mouse, you should be able to, there you go.
Can you see my mouse now?
Yep,
Okay. Can I click back a page too, Jay? All right.
absolutely.
All right, great. So there's an existing building located off of Liberty Lane here. The rest of the site is wooded. They also have a secondary access point on this side of the site. The wetlands on the site are located in the northern tip. These have been flagged by a wetland biologist. There's a 50-foot buffer associated with those wetlands. The property line that we have shown on this plan is just using best available information. We haven't completed a full class 1 survey of the property yet. The topography of the site generally slopes down towards the wetland area, towards the north and towards the west. The applicant, South County Post and Beam, their existing business is located on this parcel. It's a separate property located on the corner of Liberty Lane and Fairgrounds Road. So the applicant's proposing 3 buildings on the site. We have shown the 3 buildings here and the associated parking. The parking that we have shown, we have 1 parking spot for every 2 employees. And then we've also shown a overflow parking area. And I'll get into the reason why we did that. So building 1, which is located in the rear, is approximately 32,400 square feet. For that building, there's no use decided at this time or tenant decided at this time. So we made an assumption of approximately 30 employees, and we have shown 15 parking spaces for that building. Building 2, which is located here, is approximately 22,500 square feet. This building will be utilized for assembly and storage as an expansion of the existing South County Post and Beam, which is located on the corner. For this building, speaking with the client, we've accounted for 10 employees. So we've shown 5 parking spaces for that building. And then the third building is very similar to building 1, where there's no tenant decided yet. That building is approximately 18,000 square feet. For that one, we've assumed 10 employees and shown 5 parking spaces. These 2 proposed buildings, with the final use not being determined, the use is assumed to be utilized as a use by right within this zone, but understanding that the parking can't be figured out until that, that final use has been figured out. We have created some overflow parking. And when we do the drainage design, we were going to factor that into the parking. And so the drainage would be oversized to compensate if that parking ever had to be expanded. And we'd prefer to leave this as grass in case they never needed that parking area versus paving it and then having a paved area that was never utilized. So the 2 access points, we'd have 2 driveway access points, 1 off Fairgrounds Road and 1 off Liberty Lane. All the buildings would be proposed with public water and public sewer. This is a pre-application, so we haven't completed any engineering at this point. The applicant would be required to, we'd have to do an engineering design of the site and a hydrology design. And we'd have to design it in a manner that meets the DEM regs and also the town requirements. Right now, we're conceptually considering, because the water goes down towards the wetlands to the west, we've shown a conceptual basin here. When we do the final engineering design, that's always subject to change with the final calculations. The other items that we'd have to prepare is a soil erosion permit report and plan, which would be required by the town and DEM, so those would have to be obtained. And then the last details would be additional utility designs for the buildings. And then lastly, a landscape design would be needed. The applicants, as part of the pre-application, is requesting a combined master and preliminary plan so that we can go ahead with these next steps and come back with a more detailed plan in front of the board to have more conversations, about the more detailed engineering design. Ken and Josh Bouvier, the owners, are present. I don't know if they want to add anything, or I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Board members have a question? Any comments from staff?
Mr. Chairman, our only primary concern, and we've discussed this with the applicant, is their explanation of use by right within the zone. There's a multitude of uses allowed in essence by right within the zone upon receipt and approval of a site plan. And some of those have varying impacts. So I think the discussion needs to be expanded with the applicant on the potential use of those buildings and what those pertain to, and potentially requiring to narrow that focus down.
Okay.
Warehouse has different implications than manufacturing. So again, I think we just need to continue those discussions with the applicant's representatives as well as the applicant.
Josh or Ken, can you maybe elaborate or answer that question?
Sure. This is Josh Bouvier. Our thought process is the building 2 is what we're really looking to use for our business expansion. And there's a pretty good amount of infrastructure expense and work that would make the other buildings difficult to build at a future date or difficult to plan for at a future date. So our thought process was to go and get the approvals for everything in one motion. As far as what the building uses are, it's really have no plan. We're happy to if there's some other things we need to do, if we need more parking, we need whatever there might be for whatever the most restrictive use would be, we're happy to address that and allow for it. But we're hesitant to take anything off the table for whatever a future tenant or future business direction might be.
So Josh, initially, if this plan moved ahead, you would start with building 2?
Yeah, the plan would be to build out the full infrastructure for the drainage, clearing and roads, and then construct building 2, and then building 1 and 3 would be built as the need was there for them.
Okay.
But you can, as you can imagine, all of the underground water work and drainage and so forth, it's going to be pretty disruptive if we have to do that around the
Yes.
existing operation.
And actually, I think based on a similar project, I think the town would require that you put in all those utilities
Right.
ahead of
Yep.
time anyway, so.
We want to go through the process with DM to get all of this approved in one motion.
So Jamie, how could we handle reviewing this if we know the use of building 2 and they want to submit app or uses at a later date for building 1 and 3?
Again, we can work with the applicant as well as legal counsel that it may be a phased project where you're approving one building and you're approving the, in essence, footprint of a building to be up to a certain size, and that the commission, the board still looks at the final use. Again, use as of right is there are a multitude of uses allowed by right within the zone, again, who have different implications. And it's not just as simple as planning for we'll say the highest use, because potentially highest use would be the wholesale and retail trade of petroleum products. That's very different than a warehouse. So again, we'll work with the applicant and Dupree and try and resolve how we move on. But again, it could be a phase 1 and phase 2. I do applaud the applicant and their efforts to fully design the project so that what they do with building 2 doesn't potentially tie their hands for a build out of the property with regards to, the square footage of 2 more buildings.
I have a comment and a question. One is that I agree with Jamie about the fact that it really makes the most sense to phase a project such as this because it would be unrealistic to think about what the highest use was, require the applicant to put in the most amount of parking, and then ultimately have a use that doesn't require such. And the other important fact here is that this is within the groundwater protection overlay district. So the impact is something that needs to be considered. I'm pleased to hear that Mr. Russo is going to do a hydrologic study. I did want to ask Mr. Russo, however, if as he goes through the process, he's very considerate of the amount of impervious surface, roof runoff, and so on, and attempts to mitigate that to the greatest extent possible.
Jamie, another question. If we approve the design with the footprints of building 1 and 3, could those be done at a later date as a development plan review when they identify the uses that were going in there?
Again, potentially there's a couple of different ways to handle it, Mr. Chairman. You could.
What would be the easiest that?
I think in working with the applicant, we want their business to be successful and expand. And if they're building in, number 2, I would potentially look at, warehouse, light warehouse or something kind of nondescript for building the other buildings, so that if they got that warehouse use, if they needed to expand into those areas, they were already permitted for that type of use. It's just if it becomes, in essence, viewed as more intense, where you would want to look at the site configuration. Warehouse to warehouse is pretty nondescript if we can hone in on what the warehouse space is, so that potentially if they had a tenant who wanted to come in and we'll say Arnold Lumber wanted to store additional lumber within a building so it's out of the weather, if it's a warehouse to a warehouse, South County Post and Beam stores lumber in one and another entity wants to store lumber in a second building. If they can plan for that now, I think that type of use may be advantageous to get that approved now. It's really just within the difference of kind of manufacturing or other uses other than warehousing or the type of warehousing changes, in essence, some of the engineering factors.
I think this is Josh again. So I think if we could kind of determine what the most restrictive uses might be, you gave the example of the petroleum distribution facility, and we could we could cross a few of those off and say, if we were going to go down that road, we'd have to come back for a phase two and try to put a, as big of a list as we can together of the uses by rights that we would be pre-approved for. I think something like that could work pretty well. We'd like to try to avoid coming back if possible, because it's just such a time-consuming process as far
And-
as getting the next build going.
And the other question is, how do you handle the detention area if you're not really sure of the exact size and uses related to the other buildings? Is there a way, perhaps Mr. Russo can answer this question, to start off with an initial design and then make modifications, or how would you handle that?
Obviously we haven't done a full study, but I would look at it similar to what we spoke about, how, I'd rather have a oversized drainage basin versus excess pavement from an environmental point of view. So, we'd have to do the calcs and figure out, how much runoff's coming off the site, what the increase is. And then, I'm just going to put a number out. Maybe it's increased by 25% so that there's some buffer in that drainage system for the impervious area to increase if it had to, but not force it to increase without need.
I think it kind of makes sense on the direction piece. If we could give them some things that we don't want to see there, just to limit how much they have to come back for. If it's just another warehouse, it's like they're saying, it shouldn't have to be that big of a deal. So I wonder if, Jamie, if you can give them direction on what you're concerned about, so they have more leeway.
Again, there are certain uses within the zone without looking at the overlay. It gets more into the into the manufacturing aspect of it. Textile production, manufacturing, food production, manufacturing, where your wastewater, may change. And I'm sure John Chalk will weigh in on that, warehouse is going to have a different flow than a wet food production facility. So again, we can look at like uses that can fall within the, categories of this. Right now you have 3 buildings with no planned loading docks. If it was a food processing facility, you're gonna have truck loading docks, and you're gonna have to accommodate a different circulation pattern for a tractor trailer. So to simply say building 3 can have any use as of right within the zone, we got to make some provisions for the uses and make sure they're accommodated along the list. I think, the applicant has stated that he's more than willing to go through that exercise, and potentially there are some that the commission can deem not approved as part of this process because the infrastructure and other ancillary site conditions would be drastically modified if those uses were anticipated. So again, Mr. DeStefano, to your point, I think there are some uses we can categorize as very similar, and then other uses that we can simply categorize as very different.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, yeah, and you can always, sit down with staff and go through the uses for that area and, maybe eliminate some and discuss some and so when you come back to the planning board, we might have some areas eliminated or items eliminated from that.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to float the idea and see if this would work for both the board and the applicant. But if the application were to proceed, as indicated previously under a phased approach with the infrastructure, let's say the utilities in the driveway in building 2, getting approval in the first stage, but leaving the rest of the site blank until the applicant really determines what direction they want to go. It would make the second phase coming back before the planning board relatively easy because you know the size of the proposed structures essentially. There may be some modifications perhaps that the applicant might want to entertain, but then it would give them the opportunity to really figure out what direction they wanted to go in and come in with specific uses rather than drill through the use code of trying to figure out which one might work, which one wouldn't. It's always difficult as a former zoning official. It's always difficult to deal with an open-ended question like that. Is like, well, a lot of those uses, they may not have any intent to actually establish there. So it may be, a lot of work for something where if the applicant were to come back, I know the intent is to reduce the amount of trips to the board or the permitting process. But if they leave everything, if we can bundle up the infrastructure and the concept of the layout, that second trip back for the second phase may be relatively easy just to confirm the use.
Well, that kind of goes back to my question earlier. Could we do development plan review on building 1 and 3?
Our ordinance really doesn't say you can, it doesn't say you can't. It tells you what qualifies as development plan review, what doesn't. But clearly the intent right now is 3 buildings with 1 being built relatively soon and the others to be determined. The belt and suspenders approach in me would be to do a 2-phase approach with planning approval and not development plan review, because it kind of looks like it kind of doesn't go in line with how the development plan review regulations read.
Okay.
I have a question for Amy. Would combining the stages of review preclude a phased approach?
This is Amy. Yeah, I'm not sure those 2 ideas are compatible because as I'm listening to everyone talk, I was thinking the options would be either to combine master and preliminary and present the planning board the schedule of uses, or at the very least, maybe a handful they want to take off the table, or don't combine the review stages, get master plan approval, and then leave the details about the uses for preliminary. Because as you know, when you do a phased approval, yeah, I don't know that I've seen a combined master preliminary for a phased development, because you're really just combining master and, let's say, preliminary for phase 1 or 2, or whichever phase they proceed with first. So I think it could be done. Might not be the most sensible or easiest way to do it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we'll work with the applicant as well as legal counsel on the permitting track with a better understanding of what the applicant's trying to achieve. And again, that may be simply, production and warehousing for building 1 and warehousing for building, building 2, production and assembly with storage, and then buildings 1 and 3 could simply just be, warehousing space. So if they had that use, someone, they can either expand into it themselves or potentially have that space available for someone else. But again, we'll more than willing to work with the applicant as well as counsel on the best permitting track, keeping the boards in mind with the outcome.
Okay. So with that said, I guess we wouldn't have to take any action on even for a master plan at this point.
Well, typically, the request is, I think you'd need to hear from the applicant whether or not they want to go forward on that request to combine, because that would be needed to advertise the master plan. So I think that decision, it doesn't need to be made now, but if it's not made now, they're going to have to come back before they formally file for master plan.
I think our preference would be to combine and work with staff to come up with a reduced list of uses and we'll see down that road. And then if we have a future use that's not on that list, then we'll come back to the board for discussion.
This is Rich Burbank. I think that's just a quick question. I know that the new regulations are going to be out for the wetlands, new guidance on that. You know, it does specify, I believe, from my review that in order to submit for, well, I guess it'd be RIPDs in this case, but oh no, it'll be a wetland submission. So you have to have your master plan approval in place to even apply. So I don't know how long that is out. You know, those regs are out, but you know, now how does that affect this if you're midstream through the process and you don't have your DEM approval, you'll have to come in for master plan. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it would work.
I don't think those regs are, I think they're, from what I gather, they have a little ways to go. There's a few questions that have been asked. They're still looking into it. I know that was actually one of the questions asked at the forum that they had. So I think a lot of that's still being looked into, Rich. So
yeah, and that's fine. I'm just making you aware that yeah.
I think that's a good point that Rich brings up, even though the finalization of the regs are still somewhat in limbo. That was something that was brought up about when the permit should be made available.
I appreciate that the applicant has come, this shows some of the benefits of the pre-application procedure and where the discussion can continue to happen and come to the planning board. And I think that it provides in the long term, this one and the last application for a more efficient process. So thank you.
So Amy, it sounds like the applicant wants to move ahead on a combined hearing.
You can add that this is Amy, then you can ask for a motion to that effect.
Do we have
And Amy, as long as that would not preclude any kind of phased approach?
I don't think it would preclude it. We're just gonna have to think carefully of, you know, staff and the applicant are gonna have to think carefully about how to present that to the board. I don't think it would legally preclude it.
Okay.
Any other comments from board members? All right, staff has prepared a motion for us.
I'll be happy to make that motion.
Okay,
The South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants the request of the applicant South County Post and Beam to combine the conceptual master plan and preliminary plan stages of review for the proposed major land development project located at 551 Liberty Lane, Assessors Plat 21-3 Lot 21. The applicant shall be required to meet the application requirements for both the conceptual master plan and preliminary plan stages of review prior to scheduling the required public hearing.
so we have a motion by Maria. Do we have a second? We have a second from Paul. Any discussion? Pam, will you take the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Paul Jordan,
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Susan Axelrod.
Aye.
Joe Murphy.
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Demasi,
Aye.
and Pam Rubinoff. Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll see you at the next level.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay?
you all.
Thank you, guys. Next item on our agenda is a major land development project conceptual master plan for the residents at Holly. We have the applicant. Mr. Holberg.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We did have a staff comment, Jamie.
Okay, Ms. Applicant, Jamie Rabbit, Planning Director. I know the applicant submitted some revised plans that show some revisions to the extension of sidewalk to the north, revisions to the internal pedestrian path, as well as some architecture or renderings associated with the units being proposed to be built. We've also had discussions along the way about passenger vehicle movements along Holly Street, as well as turning into the site. The applicant is requesting that the planning board grant a waiver of the separating distances between the buildings. The regulations require 50 feet, and the applicant is asking for 30. And again, the applicant has yet to provide turning movements for those passenger vehicles into the site. So at the staff level, we took a look at that. We have concerns that in order to maneuver from Holly Street into a few of the garages, that passenger vehicle actually has to cross over, in essence, the center line of the access drives and head into what would be oncoming traffic. And again, we don't think that's a good practice. And again, it's only required because the applicant is not maintaining the 50-foot separating distances, so they don't have the room to fit the access drives in a manner that won't allow that conflict to not occur. So again, right now, staff is not in support of the waiver request until the passenger vehicle turning movements are accommodated, which do not require a vehicle to cross over the center line to enter the proposed units.
Jamie, I've given you remote control. If you want to use your mouse, you can point to the area that you're talking about.
So, thank you, Jay. So if a vehicle is headed north on Holly Street and they need to make a left-hand turn into the first 3 duplexes, in order to make the turning movement and getting to that northeasternmost unit, that vehicle actually has to get on the southern side of that access drive in order to make the turning movement. So if there was a car making an exit in an easterly direction towards Holly, the car entering the facility who needed to get into Unit 1 can't make that turning movement. So it's either got to stop on Holly Street, the car that's on the, exiting the site has to back up. If there was greater dimension between the 2 units, in essence, Jay, if you just bear with me a moment. And again, if the commission members or applicant have a question, I'll try and go over this carefully. Again, that turning movement, if you follow my cursor, that car has to turn. In order to make the swing into the garage, they have to stay on the southern side.
Jamie.
On this northern.
We're not seeing
We can't see your cursor.
Yeah, Jamie, I don't know if you have to accept the control.
Oh, sorry. Jay, I'm just going to pull up a quick PowerPoint.
Okay.
I have the turning movements. And can the board members see this graphic representation?
If you can enlarge it, yes.
I will do so. We'll try and do this first. Is that better? And again, sorry, it's an overlay. So the first at the top of the screen is an orange rectangle that represents a passenger vehicle. The second orange block is a passenger vehicle, which would be headed in an easterly direction to the intersection of Holly Street. To the mid left of the screen is that first northeastern unit. And what you see is that orange car makes a left-hand turn, and in order to get into that unit, in essence, is parked where that second orange rectangle is. And they're crossing the center line in order to make that turning movement. If the units were further apart, that conflict would not exist because the driveway could be relocated between the units in a manner that eliminates that conflict.
Any questions from board members on that graphic? Right.
The turning, just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, the turning templates are from the ITE manual
Okay,
to the traffic engineers.
all right. Mr. Kenyon, any comment on the issue that Mr. Rabbit has brought up?
For the record, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Scott Hallberg. This is actually the first that I'm hearing this. I don't know if the applicant or his engineer were made aware of these issues. The applicant's engineer is not here tonight. He has his son's 10th birthday. We thought we had the engineering issues resolved on this. So obviously, in order to address those concerns, we'd have to get a traffic engineer to look at this.
Okay. All right. The applicant also submitted some architectural designs.
Yes, so at the last meeting, there was a request made that the applicant provide a breakdown in the amount of the property covered by buildings, driveways, the buffer, and the remaining land. So the plan that's up there now actually shows it color-coded, and then they also submitted a revised site plan that has the calculations for the amount of land for each of those uses. The revised site plan also shows the proposed sidewalks extending along the property until the last driveway. They provided architecturals showing schematics of the proposed units. And at the end of the meeting, the board had asked the applicant if he was willing to increase the number of LMI units. And what we were going to suggest tonight is, as the board knows, based on the inclusionary zoning, he's required to provide 2 units, which are also the density bonus. And that the inclusionary zoning requires that those be at 80% AMI. So tonight, the applicant was going to propose an additional LMI unit with for a total of 3, but with the third unit to be at 120% of AMI. My understanding is that that unit would still count towards the town's goal of 10%, but it would also provide a range of affordability, which is one of the goals of the town to provide multiple types of affordable units.
John, I did notice on that plan that they haven't been identified on the plan where those units are going to be. And they should be, at least the 2 that were proposed. And if you're going to offer a third one, they should be labeled on that plan, so we know which units they are and that they're distributed throughout that development.
Sure, we can do that.
I would also like to reiterate my suggestion from the last meeting on this particular project that was related to the waiver and the the request for such based on hardship, which I don't find compelling. As a matter of negotiation, made the suggestion that the applicant make that extra building, which they would not normally have in this plan, which would be 2 units, and those 2 units would be the affordable units. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, which is something that I rarely support the idea of, is that I'm not certain that this walking path is worth the area, the time, and the expense that would be required to put it in, given the fact that this is such a narrow, tight lot that is so close to the residences on Oak Street. I'm not really sure what would be gained by a walking path. I think you would be better off having that area just remain as open green space for the use of the residents.
I think that was discussed at the last meeting, Maria, and some of the members had asked for, I believe there was going to be I don't know, some seats or picnic table area. And that's why that pathway was, I thought, was put in there.
You could still have seats and a picnic table without going through the time and expense of putting a path in.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, my recollection was the path was originally there because the sidewalks weren't going to be provided. And then when the applicant agreed to the sidewalks, we asked the board for input whether you still wanted the walking path or not. The walking path, I don't think is a big issue for the applicant. In response to the waiver request, I just want to note that the burden is that the literal enforcement of the regulation is impracticable and will exact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land in question, which is exactly what's happening here. And then it goes on to say it's not and, it's an or. Waiver or modification of the regulation is in the best interest of good planning practice or design, as evidenced by consistency with the comprehensive community plan and the zoning ordinance. In this case, we know that this property was previously proposed for a commercial use, and there was a lot of objections from the neighbors. So the applicant is now proposing a higher density residential use in order to so those objections don't move forward. And we think under the comprehensive plan, by providing the additional affordable unit, that this would be in the best interest of good planning and would be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon. Other comments from board members?
Paul Jordan.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just have a question for Jamie about this turning radius question in that southernmost driveway. I'm curious about sight lines across the lawn. I guess my question is that turning radius something that's required, or you just see it as a potential issue with that driveway?
Mr. Jordan, it's actually for the southern driveway entrance and the central driveway entrance. The issues are the same.
Yep.
And again, it's accommodating. There's maybe 7 or 8 feet in front of those garage doors to the main aisle. So because they're constrained by the 30 feet between the units, accommodating the turning movement and the radius is, in essence, you can't accommodate that unless you're on the opposite side of the road.
But it's not a road, it's a driveway. I mean, I'm thinking, I realize you live in a
It's a
single
driveway
family.
to a multi-family project. It's not a driveway to a single family. If that was a single family home, absolutely no issues. But it's a shared common access to the traveling public.
Okay, thank you.
Susan, you had your hand up.
Hi, this is Susan. I do have a quick question. Could you put up the artist's renderings of the houses again, the other photograph? I am concerned, looking at the plan, that the view from Holly Street into the neighborhood is that blank wall side of the building, and there are 4 in a row coming down Holly Street. And I wonder if you've considered maybe swinging the door around to the side with a little walking path or some other way to break up so that to the rest of town, it doesn't look like the side view of all of those buildings lined up on Holly Street. I'm grateful that you don't have garage doors facing Holly Street, but the side of the building isn't very pretty. Can that be some detail added to it, or the doorway moved, or some other way to break up that blank wall?
Yes, Scott Hallberg. Sure, that door could be moved. My impression from the last meeting was that we didn't want anything facing Holly Street, and that's why everything faces interior, except for the northernmost building. But certainly that door could be moved to the side.
Mr. Chairman, Rabbit, Planning Director, I think Mr. Hallberg, to Mrs. Axelrod's question about, I think the orientation of the garage doors was the most concerning aspect of the development with regards to street presence. But I think you've stated that you're willing to look at establishing, in essence, a street presence for those street side units. So that would be, I think, 4 of them, correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, 4.
Yep,
That's great, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other board members have a comment? I had a question. Jamie, with that, the turning radius issue, suppose he combined those buildings and he had 3 buildings with 4 units. That he'd be able to increase his distance between, or get his maybe 50 feet distance required, and he'd eliminate the need for that waiver.
Yeah, the applicant may have a few opportunities to potentially get similar yield within the development without, drawing in a Zoom setting this evening. I think from my perspective, there's, an important aspect. If the board, in working with the applicant, if the board concedes to the fact the applicant's proposing a sidewalk along Holly Street, and that the interior pedestrian movements don't need to be formal, they could be informal, just across grass, to Mrs. Mack's point, that could allow the applicant a little more flexibility in the unit design and potentially going from a duplex to a triplex in a couple locations. But again, that's a discussion that staff would encourage and look forward to having with the applicant. Again, I know they put considerable work into this design, but there are some options available to them.
I have a question. How would you look at it if if we eliminated garages and just had surface parking?
Again, my goal would be to eliminate the conflict, Mr. Hallberg. And again, there are multiple ways to address that by eliminating the garages, sliding some units, going from duplex to triplex. And again, I'm more than willing to have that conversation with your design team or just with you and, have that discussion on some options that may be viable.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Any other comments from staff or board members? All right, I guess, Mr. Kenyon, we have some work to do yet on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the point that was just brought up, we raised at the last meeting that you could reduce or eliminate some of these waivers by having larger buildings. And we didn't think that's what the board wanted. We thought you wanted more of a scaled down residential look rather than larger buildings with more units. So that's why we thought it was in the best interest of planning to grant the waivers. But if the board is telling us that you want larger buildings with more units, then we can certainly look into that.
Well, that was only my opinion, looking at the graphics when Mr. Rabbit pointed out the churning issue. So again, because the buildings were too close, my conclusion was that perhaps you could combine those buildings, but I don't know if the rest of the board members feel the same way about that or would entertain that. So perhaps they can have an opinion on that. You're muted, Maria.
I know.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Kenyon, initially, when this project came forward, we had the idea, although we don't yet have regulations to that effect, of a cottage style development. And of course, as we have all learned through the process, that is not quite the way that it ended up in terms of layout or size. However, I think the idea of having it fit in to the existing neighborhood is certainly a good one. I don't see why we shouldn't look at some alternative designs, but again, back to that issue of the hardship, it's not really a hardship, it's a self-created situation based on how the project is designed. And I would certainly be in favor of trying to increase that if the project goes forward in this particular configuration, having 2 additional units as affordables or 1 building, because it would be that extra building that was achieved.
Maria, when you say are you talking about the waiver for
Yes.
the distance between the buildings?
Yes,
Okay.
which may obviously not be relevant if a different design comes forward.
Okay.
But again, that's something that we
I
have
just
to
wanted to
look at.
clarify which waiver.
Yep.
Any other comments from board members on Joe?
I certainly would be supportive of what Maria proposed. If the applicant's getting pretty much an additional building based on that 25 foot, if that is 2 units are affordable, that would also put us well within the amount that's required in a comprehensive permit. And in a comprehensive permit in the past, I know we've kind of, the distance between buildings has not been as strong of an issue. But I also want to hear from Rich what he thinks about that turning radius, because I see it as an inconvenience. I don't know how big of an issue it is. I mean, when I'm in a Home Depot parking lot, I certainly have to go out to the other lane to get into my parking spot. So how big of an issue do you really believe that is, Rich?
Well, I really haven't looked at it yet. And, I think that's probably something that maybe could be clarified at preliminary.
Rich, we're getting a lot of feedback from,
Is it all right now?
now you're still getting it.
I think Rich brings up a good point, that it's a conversation that needs to be had both with the planning department as well as Rich representing the engineering with the applicant.
Is that maybe a little better?
Yep, that's actually much better.
Yeah, I've got multiple microphones here, one on the whatever. So, yeah, I
The
mean,
celebrity
we haven't seen preliminary yet. And, I think it's something that we just request that they clarify how they get in and out. If maybe the curb cuts have a different radius. I mean, there could be a lot of different ways to address it. It is a concern, I think, a little bit. I don't think it's good for people to be, because in this case, they're going to be backing out of their garages. They're going to be coming out. They're going to go out into the road. It's a little bit of a strange swing, but maybe it's something that could be clarified at preliminary. It's still very early with the plans we have for me to make any hard look at it at this point, but it's certainly something that I would be a little concerned about.
So Steve, I guess I would just summarize say that I would be supportive of the existing project with the addition of Maria's proposal.
Okay. So to clarify that, would be how many LMI units total?
Well, I think what Maria had indicated, there was already one building or 2 units proposed, and the applicant appears to, with the less than the 50 foot, is getting a additional building than he otherwise would. And I think Maria proposed that those additional building of those 2 units also be LMI, even if it's out of 120. And so that's what I was agreeing with.
Yes,
the-
and that's what my
So it'd be a total of
suggestion
4?
was. 4.
Right, because the last time we asked them to go up to 3, so I'm just clarifying it. Susan?
Hi, could I also just ask about the present square footprint of the buildings? Our original notes had them at 1,440 square feet. I think they're now at 1,790 square feet. And I wonder how this changes. I think they've changed in size. Can I confirm that?
Scott Hallberg speaking. It shows a footprint of 720 square foot per unit. And that would be for the ground floor, including the proposed garage.
Okay,
So multiply it times 2. And that's where we get the 1440, and the living space is actually less than that because you're backing out a garage.
yeah. So do you know what the living space would be now at this point?
The garage is probably 120 square feet. So if you take 1440 minus 120, you're at 1,320 of living.
Okay.
Quick
Because
math.
Our original notes that I have these at 2 720 square foot units. Was that never accurate?
No, 720 per footprint per unit.
Okay. That was
And
just the
then
foot.
And then there's a second floor, Susan.
Okay,
Second floor, right? And then back out a 1-stall garage.
okay, got it. Sorry, thanks.
Looks like we have a hand up in the attendees. Jay, if you can bring in that phone number.
Yes, the phone number 783-0294. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Autumn Francesca at 96 Oak Street. My question was exactly the one that was just asked previously. So just to confirm, there are 12 proposed residences, and each residence will be approximately 1,300 square feet, and they're going to have 2 bedrooms. Is that correct?
I'll let Mr. Holberg answer that.
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my only
You're welcome.
question.
Right, while we're in the attendees, any other questions of the applicant? Any further comments from board members or staff?
Mr. Chair, we do have one more additional hand.
Oh,
Sean, go ahead.
okay. Please identify yourself, Sean.
Sean Deibler.
Go ahead,
The-
please.
So the site plans listed 2-bedroom, but the renderings show a 3-bedroom unit. The architectural renderings.
There, if they do, it's an error. It was mostly architectural, not an interior footprint. That might have made it to the plan. I apologize for that. They're 2-bedroom units. This was more about the exterior architectural view from Holly Street and Oak Street surrounding area.
Okay, looks like Sean has muted himself.
No, that's fine. I was
Oh.
just on the clarification because it says a 2-bedroom and then the renderings show a 3-bedroom.
No,
Yeah,
that's,
okay. I apologize for that.
thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so Mr. Ken, you want to come back to us at the next meeting?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note that the comprehensive permit was mentioned earlier. To be eligible for a comprehensive permit, the applicant would have to provide 3 affordable units, which is what we're proposing to do. Just so the board's aware of that, my recommendation to him would be to file as a comprehensive permit with 3 units affordable.
Okay.
But you do know that at this point in time, where the applicant is at with this particular project, it would probably be more efficient from a time perspective for him to continue with this inclusionary project. Don't you think?
I normally I would, but things seem to keep changing as we come back. So I'll have to talk with them.
Well, do we have a consensus that, at the last meeting, we did ask the applicant, or he suggested he would make a 3rd unit available. Now Maria has mentioned 4. Do we have a consensus on either number?
Steve, I think you misinterpreted when we were talking about the waiver and we were talking about the impact of the extra building. My suggestion was that the building would be subject to the additional affordable units, meaning 2, because that's what the applicant would be getting. And I would be fine with 120%, and it would show an effort to do a project that both represents infill and a greater number of affordability, because as everyone knows, it's been bits and pieces and been very low in terms of percentages. And Mr. Halba could set a good example here. And hopefully in the future, he would do the same with perhaps a really nicely designed cottage project. Just a suggestion.
Okay, Mr.
Chairman,
Kenyon.
this is Paul Jordan, I'm just gonna, I guess other than the turning radius, I don't see any other issues with this project. I think Mr. Kenyon's right. We keep coming back for another bite at the apple. Am I right in thinking that turning radius is the one big stumbling block at this point?
It'll appear the staff brought that up and they had issues with it, yes.
Right.
Again, from Mr. Chairman, Jamie Rabbit, Planning Director, from a density design aspect, there are certain things the applicant needs to do from a regulatory side as well as a public safety side. If he can make the public safety side work, he's in essence potentially bound by the dimensional requirements of the town zoning code. To Mr. Kenyon's point, the applicant's trying to adhere to that. He's asked for a few waivers. I think the front to back waiver has some merits. I have some concerns about the side, but those may be able to be accommodated with a slight modification to the design, or maybe asking for less of a waiver. They're asking from 50 to 30 right now. It could be 50 to 40, and that 40 could accommodate those turning movements. But again, it's a discussion I'd like to have with Mr. Kenyon to simply go from the 2 units that are originally with the application to now 4. I think that, it's worth the conversation, but from a regulatory side, I understand what Mr. Kenyon's weighing is a comp permit requires potentially 3, and this process started with 2 and now potentially is commission board members are asking for 4. So again, I think with a slight redesign or rethinking of how the arrangement of the units are on the property, that they can either not need a, we'll say, side-to-side waiver, or a reduction of that in order to accommodate those turning movements. So from a design perspective, it gets better as it relates to public safety. Mr. Holbrook has mentioned this evening that he will work on a little bit of the architecture as it relates to street presence. Staff can assist him in that. We've sat through a number of workshops with you with regards to design and the cottages and discussions of building styles beyond just the cottage units. So again, I look forward to working with Mr. Kenyon and Mr. Holbrook with regards to this application. I think it still can move forward under the existing permitting process, but I do respect Mr. Kenyon's opinion that at some point he has to discuss with his client of possibly changing permit venues, given the the board's request to increase the LMIs. And perhaps with a discussion with Mr. Kenyon, 120, the 120% of medium income may not affect his pro forma, but I think it's hard for him to make that decision this evening.
And I think it's worth bringing up that our deadline, I believe, for this project is April the 11th, and our next meeting is March 23rd. It would be great if we could wrap this up at that point, if we could have some kind of agreement. I, of course, prefer my version and suggestion. However, this is something that I think could be finished up fairly soon if we continue our conversations and try to come up with a design that suits both the board and the applicant.
Can I get a motion to continue to March 23rd?
I will make that motion to continue this project until the March 23rd regular planning board meeting.
Do I have a second? A second from Susan. Any discussion? All those in favor, please take the roll, Pam.
Steve DeMasi,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Susan Axelrod,
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Paul Jordan.
Aye.
And Pam Rubinoff, aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We'll see you on March 23rd, Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just mention, Mr. Kenyon, Mr. Holbrook, we are available to meet, and we can do that in person if you would prefer, John and Scott. Call into our office and we can make those arrangements.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. All right, next item on our agenda is a development plan review advisory to zoning for 1860 Kingstown Road.
Mr. Chairman, just bringing them in.
Okay. Got everybody, Jay?
I believe so. Mr. Shikashi, is Doug Gruner, is he with your team?
No, Matt is.
Yes, no, Jay, that's the architect. Doug is the
Okay.
architect. Yeah.
Thank you.
The engineer is Matt.
Like there was no writing on it, and there was no, there was like no, it didn't say anything about who it came from.
Looks like we have everybody. All right. You have the floor. I don't know who's going to speak first for the applicant.
I'll be more than happy to, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, honorable members of South Kingstown Planning Commission. My name is Attorney K. Joseph Shikachi.
Yeah, I was in
I
it.
represent the applicant this evening. With me is Matt Burton, the engineer, and we have Douglas Gerton, the architect with us also, which I'm happy to find out myself tonight. So we are here before you tonight seeking a positive recommendation to the zoning board. This is an application that this honorable body approved several years ago on a much smaller footprint. We then proceeded to the zoning board and ultimately were denied at the zoning board level because of the internal traffic pattern and the width of the parking spots or the size of the parking spots. My client has taken an appeal. That appeal is pending. Appeal has been well over a year anyway due to COVID. And in the meantime, he went out and secured the property next door, and that we have now made the property part of the application. This is a reuse of a commercial building. I believe it was an old pharmacy at one point. And we are proposing a retail dollar type store in the village area. It is not much different other than the internal radius is much greater and bigger, and I would say a lot safer than what you approved 2 years ago. And the parking spots are bigger. I can turn over to Matt Burton. He can go through the details. I will tell you that we have secured DEM approval of the project. And we have also secured DOT approval of the project as well, as you see it before you this evening. We are not asking for any waivers. We're asking for a recommendation, and then we would go to the zoning board in the next month or two and request a special use permit. I'd be happy to answer any.
And Joe just froze, the attorney just froze. I don't know if he froze for the rest of the board members.
Yes, he did.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, is he back?
Did you hear me? Did
Uh,
everybody hear me?
You froze for a minute there. We lost the last 30 seconds or so of your conversation.
I'm sorry. Basically, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we have secured DEM and DOT approval to the project. It's the same project you approved, only it's a little bit, I would say, safer in terms of internal traffic radius. I can turn over to the engineer and the architect for any technical questions. We're not asking for any waivers at all. We're just asking for a favorable recommendation to the zoning board.
Okay. Did your engineer have anything he wanted to add before I ask the planning board members for comments?
I'll defer to Matt.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you'd give me a few minutes, I'll just walk you through, I guess in a little bit more detail, the site plan changes that Jay has up on the screen now.
Okay.
For the record, my name is Matthew Bruton. I'm an engineer from BL Companies, headquartered in Meriden, Connecticut. So what you see on the screen above or in front of you is the redesigned retail development, South Kingstown Road, or Kingstown Road, sorry, is on the right side of the page. So in similar keeping with the previous application, we do have a single access driveway to the north, which is shown in kind of in that darker gray. As Joe mentioned, this has been reviewed and approved for a physical alteration permit by the Rhode Island DOT. As part of that review and the previous review by South Kingstown, truck turning movements were assessed and sight lines. A big change from the previous application to this one is that the truck exiting and entering this site does not have to cross over the center line of Kingstown Road. That was a bit of a sticking point with commissions on the last application. So moving to the site, obviously you can see
Matt,
that. Yes.
Matt, I go ahead. I gave you remote control of my screen. If you want to accept it, there you go.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Jay. All right. So the driveway, as I was speaking about before, circling where my hand is now, As you kind of move into the site, we do have the proposed handicap parking spaces, as this is adjacent to the main entrance of the building. We do show in this darker gray proposed parking on the side and the rear of the facility. These parking spaces are 9 feet wide by 20 feet deep, which is an increase in size to a more traditional parking space. The original application, when we only had 1 parcel of land and not 2, was in compliance with your regulations, but it was a much tighter squeeze for especially larger vehicles. Oop, I apologize. Let me just change this here to a hand. As we move around the back of the building, you can see we've obviously incorporated the additional adjacent land to provide this rear loading enclosure area and concrete pad. This will allow loading and unloading of merchandise to be walked directly back into the retail developments, and also provides the turnaround capabilities for the truck on site that will not interfere with customers or employees within the parking lot. That was a topic that was brought up during the original application as well, crossing traffic patterns with delivery vehicles. So those are a couple items that I just wanted to point out. In general, if the board has not changed dramatically since the last application, we do show sidewalk along the frontage, which previously went beyond the frontage of the property. That is now included and does go to the abutting driveway next door. And as I'm sure everyone is familiar with this area, there is a sidewalk on the other driveway for the abutter that does service a existing bus stop that is to remain. Jay, I think I can move forward a little bit. This is a page. Yeah, Rob. Just gonna move forward a little bit further. This is the truck movement that was revised or reviewed and approved by DEM or DOT. I apologize. Showing the truck movement off the road, circulating the site and back onto the road. We do show here an updated grading and drainage plan. This is to comply with obviously 2002 Rhode Island guidelines for soil and erosion control and the stormwater manual. There is a wetland straddling the rear property line of the parcel. There is a wetland there that was to remain. There are no direct wetland impacts to this. Plans that has also been reviewed and approved by Rhode Island DEM. I'm just gonna do forward. And in addition to acquiring this additional land to help spread out this project to make it a more safer layout, we are obviously providing increased landscaping with a variety of trees and shrubs along the frontage and foundation of the building, spread around the parking lot and around the perimeter of the abutters and along the stormwater management system. Everything else is remained relatively in the same. We do show all the utility connections that are available: electric, telephone, sanitary, water. We do have a photometric plan that shows the minimum lighting required for safety and security of the visitor to the site. They are LED, dark sky compliant, full cutoff fixtures. That's kind of a quick high level of kind of the land development plans and kind of some of the larger changes from the original application. And as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. And, Doug Grunert, the project architect, is here if you did want to discuss the exterior elevations as well.
I do appreciate the enlarging the parking spaces, because that was a concern the last time you were here. Looking at the turning radius or the impervious surface for your tractor trailer, that's a big area, and I'm sure you're going to hear from some other board members on that. So you can hold comment on that till we get some more feedback from board members. But right now, I'll let them speak on this. So,
Certainly.
board members, comments? Joe?
Well, Steve, I think you hit the first point that I did. I appreciate the additional parking and the parking being of more of a standard size. If I recall right, last time they had proposed 8 feet wide and now they're going with 9 feet wide, which is a standard. Although now they're doing the 20-foot and standard is typically 18. I'm not sure if you're doing that because you think that we wanted larger parking, but we want to meet the requirements, but we don't want to have a lot more pavement than necessary. So I would think that the standard 9x18 would be fine instead of standard 9x20. And then the same comment with Steve on the back, there seems to be an awful lot of impervious. So we want to be able to have good truck movement and good vehicle movement, but there seems to be an excess of impervious right now.
So let me interrupt you, Mr. Murphy, by saying that I understand that, but that was the justification for the denial by the zoning board. So we are amenable to reducing those.
And I'm going back a ways, my memory could be wrong, but I believe that the parking that was proposed last time was they met the requirements, but by trying to in order to meet the requirements, they went with all 8-foot wide parking places, which just truthfully was not practical. And now you're proposing 9x20, which certainly the 9 is, appreciate that 9 standard. All I'm saying is the 20 may be a couple of feet beyond standard. Typically, I think the 9.
And ultimately, when the,
you don't necessarily have to go beyond standard. And then the same with the impervious on the back. Last time there wasn't a lot of movement, but now there seems to be excess.
So
Go ahead.
and we have no problem reducing it to the standard 18 feet or even reducing the pervious amount. But the zoning board in their denial 2 years ago, or excuse me, over about a year ago, they used that as a justification for denial. So if this board wanted to recommend, as we're seeking a recommendation tonight, to reduce the parking size and reduce the radius to the absolute minimum, we would have no objection to that at all. And we will certainly make that point clear to the zoning board.
Did they specifically require a 9x20?
I don't recall. I will defer to the engineer. I was not the attorney of record when they went before the zoning board that evening, but I know they wanted more parking and they wanted the turning radius. We can accommodate both. We can accommodate a smaller one that meets the requirements, or we can do a little bit more if that's what ultimately the zoning board decides. We would prefer to do what you want, which is less. Less is more in this case. Less is better. Less impervious pavement. It's cheaper. It's easier. It's better for the environment. But the zoning board may have a different view, and we want to be able to meet both of your desires. But
I don't think that I don't think that the planning board, zoning board was a different view. The previous proposal was significantly less, and now you've gone, I think, beyond the standard and exceeded it. So unless the zoning board specifically had required you to go beyond standard, which I don't think that they had, I would say that the standard would be acceptable and would be less impervious than you have now.
And we would be glad to do that. We have no problem doing that.
Yeah, and I think the zoning boards, I mean, they went on based on a recommendation that the planning board supplied. And the planning board had an issue with the trailer truck backing into the space and the blocking parking spaces. So that was probably the major issue with the previous design. So, but other board comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, Steve. I think we are the ones that said we wanted more driving radius for these tractor trailer trucks. Someone even on the board mentioned, why don't we buy the lot next door or try to make a deal? So it sounds like they've done what we've said. And maybe they've taken it to an extremity because of what we've told them. So.
Hey, I can, this is Matt Bruton again. I can talk to the parking spaces. We had them, as Mr. Murphy indicated, around, I believe, around 8 feet wide before, which complied with your regulations, but to your concerns was a little tight. The 9x20 is actually a Dollar General standard space. So with the extra room we had, we decided to not only hit the minimum requirement for your regulations, but also hit the tenant requirement. But as Joe said, if you're happier with 9 by 18, that is an easy change to make. In regards to the truck movement on site, you can see on the screen here the truck turning radius. This is a very tight turn, but the minimum pavement required to make a turn on site and not interfere with existing parking spaces. If you remember, between discussions with this entity and the zoning board, there was a lot of concern about the truck using parking spaces, whether customers or employees would be on site or not, and to avoid that conflict and going down that same path again, the developer went out and purchased additional land to accommodate what was needed for safer movements on the property with no conflict. So, you know, obviously we'd take any positive recommendations or suggestions to the next board, but we were responding directly to the theme of concerns by the town during our last application.
Maria, Pam, comments? Susan, Paul, anybody?
Nothing to add in addition to what our colleague said. I am pleased to see here that it is a safer place, but definitely where there's options to reduce the pavement and the impervious given the close wetlands, et cetera, I would encourage them to look at that.
Okay.
I agree that the addition of the lot, as I believe I was the one who suggested this early on, does make for a safer ingress, egress, turning movement. You're not going to see shared parking with tractor trailers and customers.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, Rich.
You know, this is really sort of the first time I think I've seen the plan, other than, well, I guess this week was really kind of the first time we've seen it. So I haven't really had too much of an opportunity to take a look, but can we zoom in on that entrance there, please? I don't know if it's UGA that's doing this, but and go back to the turning radius, the previous plan, but zoom in on the entrance. So am I clear to think that that's all concrete up there, a big triangular space there, so that the wheels of the truck can go over all of that edge and then over the sidewalk? And is that what's happening there?
Correct. If you could see my hand here on the cursor,
Yeah, that's all concrete?
This area here and this area here are a mountable concrete section to make sure that the exiting vehicle does not cross over the existing center line.
And how wide is it at the edge of where the curbing is?
Yeah.
And how wide is that concrete?
I apologize. A little delay here. So the pavement edge is 24 feet, which obviously is channelized for the vehicle. It extends, man, I could ballpark it, right? This is 20
Well,
feet.
no, how far is
Probably
it? from the edge?
probably 10 feet width in the max. If we're going particular in this area, 10 feet.
No, at the curb line, way out here, where that
Oh, here.
concrete triangle hits, and then where does the other end hit?
Hold on one second. I can measure it off screen. 1 second. I understand your question now.
Rich, is that curb cut got to be reviewed by DOT?
Well, apparently it was, and it was approved.
hasn't.
That's what the engineer has.
By DOT.
Okay. It has not?
It has been approved by
It has been
DOT.
approved by DOT, which is.
We have a PAP for this project.
But I understand, but I mean, Joe, I think just physically, I think to look at this from the street, you know, it looks like it could be 100 feet of concrete across that. It's effectively the truck entrance.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Rich, from roughly where my hand is hovering north here, down to down to the other end here, it's approximately 88 feet.
88 feet. That's what that effective curb cut is. You know, although it's going to be curbing, that's going to be down to whatever, 35 or 40 feet. But it's just, you know, I got to tell you, that'll be the widest curb cut that we've had in town since I've been here anyways.
And where's
And
the,
the other thing is, Matt, excuse me, Steve, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask where the sidewalk is within that.
Well, the sidewalk is a normal sidewalk. It's just that the truck will be driving over it when it's coming in and out. I mean, how often they have deliveries or not? I mean, I really
Once
can't say.
a week.
Well, Matt,
Once a
yeah,
week.
Right, once a week.
Yeah.
So whatever, but it's still visually, it's an 80-foot wide swath of concrete across that entire entrance. That's big. Now, the other thing, Matthew, that I had discussed with the previous engineer, and I believe it was effectively handled, was I had asked because the discharge of that pond in back goes on, and again, we haven't seen much on this. I haven't seen a drainage narrative or anything. We will require that as part of a soil erosion control permit application, but normally it's good to get it now, but we didn't get it this time, I guess. I'm assuming it's been modified, but the discharge goes across property lines. And what I asked as part of that previous, or at least the wetlands crosses property lines, and discharge from this property is affecting, I believe, other properties because the wetlands is so large in this area. But I asked that 100-year storm be treated on volume. I know that normally it's 100-year on peak flow for with DEM, but I also asked that we manage the 100-year volume so that's not flowing constantly for a long period of time.
Rich,
Were you able to do that?
Yep, great question. I do remember that from the prior application. Yes, this system has been redesigned. Obviously, we have a lot more room on site to spread out and can take a different look at it. We are still matching drainage patterns to the rear. You are correct. Everything flows from basically the street back to the wetland, and that wetland does straddle property lines. We are attenuating peak flows and peak volumes up to the 100 year.
Okay, well, I'm going to take your word for it because I haven't seen a narrative, but it would be good to get the narrative, and I'll hold you to it at the time of the CERC permit, unless you feel like
Understood.
submitting it at this point. But
The stormwater management report was part of this submission, so I'm not sure if that got distributed to everybody, but I'm happy to pass along again at the next step.
thank you. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Any other staff comments? Did Maria, did you want to bring up the landscaping plan?
You read my mind. Thank you, Steve. But I also wanted to make a note that the applicant on his submission, sheet GN1, should make reference to the fact that this is in the South Kingstown Route 108 Special Management District, which has some criteria associated with it. So that should be reflected on the plan. And I have some other comments relative to that I will save for later on. I think primarily the landscaping, have the large set of plans right here. The internal landscaping is good. The plant selection, particularly along the rear portion of the lot, is good. However, there is, I think, potential for on that very large traffic circle to modify that and perhaps add some plantings. And most importantly, the view shed that you see along Route 108, and if the engineer familiarizes himself with our special management district for this area, the plantings along that stretch need to reflect, I think, a better design. It's primarily the southern corner of the lot has the as we have all heard in the past, the standard straight row of arborvitae, which can be improved upon with some other species, staggered so that you don't have this straight row of plantings. And of course, we all know that they tend to be deer fodder. The plantings along the road are primarily American holly for the larger trees, but American holly is a very slow growing, although it's a nice choice because it's coniferous in nature, it is very slow growing, and it would be, I think, better served as something that could be staggered along with some street trees. So I think that's worth looking at. The Ilex glabra that's in there is a smaller shrub that lends itself more to a planting along the building itself or into other adjacent areas, but the streetscape is of utmost importance. And the other question that I have, I'm not sure if your landscape architect is here this evening, is at the entrance, immediately to the right, there's a large, there's a triangular area that's difficult to discern what that is, and a larger area beyond that, it looks like there's a spot for a sign. And that is also an area that can and should be planted with appropriate street trees or other species, because obviously we all know that adding plantings helps to mitigate the impacts of stormwater. It serves as an aesthetic area. So that's something that I would like to see modified, and I think it could be done fairly easily. The plantings adjacent to the building themselves are good.
Only thing I could add to that is the southern end of that building looks like there's no windows or any kind of design on it. And I think we need some kind of landscaping to break up that big blank wall. Whether some trees through there, just to break it down a little and make it a little easier on the eyes.
And with what the applicant will save on fewer parking spaces, he could put into landscaping.
There you go. You always have an answer.
Mr. Chairman and Ms. Vice Chair, yeah, happy to be, I'm not the landscape architect, I'm the civil engineer, but the landscape architect is a BL employee. Happy to revisit with them to stagger trees, look at a variety of species, add some plantings along the southern wall to address your comments. Obviously, we want this to be aesthetically pleasing, and I think it'll be a welcome addition along this strip, as it is a vacant parcel now that is quite overgrown with trees and underbrush.
Maria, if you want to give us a suggested list of species, we'd certainly consider them. Here's your chance.
I would be happy to do that. I could make certain that I send those along to staff and they send it to you folks.
Thank you.
Other board members have a comment on the landscaping? I see we have a hand up. I don't know if it's in regards to the landscaping, but maybe we can. I think that number was up before, Jay. That might be Francesca.
Hi, yeah, no, it's not related to landscaping. So if you want to continue with that discussion, it's a different basic question.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right. I saw there was also a lighting plan presented. Did planning board members have any questions on that? Our resident expert, Joe.
Are you talking to me, Joe Shikachi, or Joe?
No, Joe Murphy.
Okay, I was going to say I'm not an expert in lighting, but thank you.
No, I don't have any questions, Steve.
Okay. Staff have any comments on the lighting plan?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. I think Jamie might have lost connection.
Okay.
is trying to get back on, but to my recollection, or my discussions with Jamie was there was no concern with lighting.
All right. Well, if there's no other general questions from board members at the moment, I'll turn it over to questions from the attendees. All right, Jamie Murdoch has his hand up. Go ahead, Jamie, if you want to unmute yourself.
I have a document. Can I share my screen?
Jay, can you handle that?
Mr. Murdoch, is it the document that you distributed earlier today via email to our department?
Yes.
Why don't I bring it up on my side and then I'll give you control. How's that?
That's fine.
Give me 1 second. Actually, I can't give you control. Maybe I can I walk through it with you?
Okay, next page. So I didn't
Jamie,
get
can
a-
you just identify yourself, please?
Yes, James Murdoch. I live in South Kingstown, within the Kingstown Road Special Management District. I was involved in the first comprehensive plan, 89 to 91, and in rewrites, and since I live within the district, have been especially interested in what's been going on here. Last go round, I spoke about the comprehensive plan and how it's connected to this special use permit, and but that wasn't fully represented in the denial of this plan. So I want to clarify, and I'm writing this here, please confirm the legal standing that the comp plan attains by virtue of this special use district, this permit. Because the section 907C says the granting of a special use permit will not impair the intent or purpose of this ordinance or the comprehensive plan of the town, which sounds like it elevates the comp plan's intent and purpose to the same legal standing as our zoning code. Is that correct?
Well, I'll let Amy answer, but generally zoning code is the law.
Thanks. Let me, this is Amy. Let me just shed some light on this. In the hierarchy of laws, the comprehensive plan is above the zoning ordinance locally. So the comprehensive plan sets forth what should be in the zoning ordinance. When the comprehensive plan is adopted or amended, the town has a certain amount of time to conform its zoning ordinance to the goals and policies in the comp plan. This is before the planning board, as it was the last go round, for advisory development plan review. That means based on the nature of the project, the planning board has to review it and provide a recommendation to the zoning board. Last time around, it was denied. We'll see what happens this time around. Then it's before the zoning board for a public hearing on the special use permit. And when this is for the public's benefit, I know the planning board knows this, when a use is designated as permitted by special use permit, it means that it's considered by the council who enacts the zoning ordinance to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, provided that all the, the conditions are met. So it's a use that's considered permitted, but certain boxes need to be checked, right? It's not something that's they're not granting a variance to establish a use that's not permitted, right? A special use permit is zoning board, you need to review this proposal and make sure all the applicable standards are met. So I think the way you phrased it in this presentation, and I did review this afternoon and anticipated this question, I think you're misinterpreting the framework of how local approvals and local regulations are understood.
Well, I'm going by the words, will not permit, will not impair intent or purpose of comprehensive plan. And so that being the case, for the zoning board to grant the special use permit, they need the planning board to assess intent and purpose and render an opinion, findings of fact on whether this submission complies with the intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan, right?
Yeah, I think the takeaway for the planning board is the board has certain standards for its advisory recommendation. And ultimately, the zoning board has to decide whether the project as proposed will conform to the comprehensive plan for any number of factors. So if, I guess, I'm not sure if the question is, if this board denies advisory development plan review, could the zoning board grant it and make that positive finding? Yes, it can. Two boards can disagree.
Understood. So, however, zoning, by virtue of section 907C, zoning seems to me could specify sole reasons for denial, not dimensional, not lighting, not landscaping, but material specific points that the planning board advises, because the planning board understands comp plan more than zoning. This is, the planning board's purview planning board's the steward of the comprehensive plan, and approved it, recommended it to the town council. So the planning board's expert on the comp plan, and the zoning board takes the planning board's opinion seriously, as they did last time. Last time, the zoning talked a lot about the planning board's denial, brought that right into the meeting. So today, the planning board, owner of the document, has a responsibility to assess compliance and then recommend if this complies or not, with specifics on what complies or what doesn't comply. And if the planning board does not recommend approval of the project with specific details directly connected to policies, intentions, purposes of the comprehensive plan, that the zoning board could then take that without anything else, deny the project, and that would withstand appeal.
Well, that depends, because I think your scenario assumes that they may not have expert testimony as to comp plan consistency, and I don't know what expert testimony they intend to present before the zoning board.
Sure, they could take the planning board's recommendations or points and rebut them. And I understand the zoning board would then look at these two things and decide.
Mr. Chairman, Jimmy Rabbit, Planning Director.
I'd like to interrupt because it was a false.
Joe, if I just
one
can.
person at a time, please. Jamie, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we have 16 pages from Mr. Murdoch. I think it would be pertinent if he went through those 16 pages, made points he would like to make to the planning board, and then allow either the planning board to ask the applicant to address what they felt was necessary, and/or our legal counsel or planning staff to address anything the board feels they need answered.
I had the same thought, Jamie. So Jamie Murdock, why don't you go through your presentation? So we're not going to go line by line and discuss it. Make your presentation, and then again, the applicant or planning board members can ask questions or rebut.
Yep, I just wanted to be sure that.
Okay,
wasn't a
we're
waste of
listening,
time.
so just please continue with your.
Okay, page 3. This is just pointing out that in the memo from Planning Department, your findings today, or if you postpone, include that the plans for project are consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's my opinion that a lot of information is needed by the planning board, and my point in yellow is I don't believe you have sufficient information at hand. I'm not done with this, and there's more, and for proper analysis, I request that the planning board obtain the needed data and analysis from wherever it chooses to obtain it, post it for public review and comment, and defer a recommendation on the proposal until that process is completed. That's my request of you today. Let's move on to the next page. Skip this. The key statements of the comprehensive plan about this special management district is it is in a principal artery of South Kingstown. There is a need for specialized land use planning efforts, and roads such as this quite often develop into commercial strips which exacerbate traffic problems and create visual clutter. The discussion about what a commercial strip is was a topic at the Zoning Board of Review, where I presented what Planners Commission did. I'm not a planner, so I'm just reporting. And the rebuttal was to have the engineer describe commercial strip development is a building with several stores in it, which in fact is a strip mall. It's a different animal. So the next page, please. Definition of commercial strip. In this comp plan, specifically in that section, is it's on principal arterial highway, having a need for specialized land use planning effort. It exacerbates traffic problems, creates visual clutter. Is that the case with this? My question to you as a criteria for judging this plan, does this application exacerbate traffic problems or create visual clutter? There are additional definition. The definition of commercial strip has been around for decades. Planning Commissioner's Journal also says it has attributes of box-like buildings, prominent parking lots visible from the roadway, multiple driveways, which is mentioned as a townwide goal, large signs, dependency on automobiles for access and circulation. That's another goal of the comprehensive plan. Next page. The National Highway Research Program report of 1987 described commercial strip development in that paragraph. I'm not going to read it to you, but it also includes randomly mixed development, many conflicting vehicular turning movements, adverse impact on pedestrian convenience and safety. Those items in bold are supported by other town-wide provisions of the comp plan, and that's why they're in bold. Next page. Many comprehensive plans around the country do not define it. They just say strip commercial as if it's well known. In Vermont, the state of Vermont chose to spell out specifics of what strip development is. And From that definition, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it includes some particulars. Point 16, limited reliance on shared highway access, lack of connection to any existing settlement, lack of connections to surrounding land uses except by highway. Both of those points are specified in the comprehensive plan and in policies of the comprehensive plan. Lack of coordination with surrounding land uses. So I've got 20 different points from industry, not my opinion. I'm just the reporter. It's for you to judge. Do these describe this application as an expansion of the existing commercial strip that the SMD is stated to be created to prevent? Next page, please. I also copied other parts of the comp plan and pasted in here. So you'll see those with green highlighting text. That's cut and paste, basically a screenshot right out of the PDF file. So promote and require high standards of development, walkable environment. The town recognizes that this rural small town character, natural resources must be protected and enhanced. Is this building of rural small town character? This illustration is a composite that I made taking the actual drawing off the applicant's plan and pasting it onto Google Street View. So this is how it would look as if you're driving along the highway according to the site plan that was sent to us. The Dollar General sign was not on the site plan. I put that in by copying Dollar General signs from other stores in Rhode Island. So this is my attempt to depict a 3D rendering of what it would look like with this store on this road, next to the group home to the left and the car dealer on the right. Next, please. The town shall encourage quality design within its commercial development and avoid strip highway commercial development patterns characterized by suburban type shopping centers. The town shall encourage commercial development that supports active modes of transportation, such as walking, biking, and public transit. I'm going to skip forward. The town shall limit the creation of multiple unnecessary driveways and curb cuts during the development review process in order to support pedestrian activity. Next. The town supports a control of urban sprawl and dispersion by concentrating population density and infill development within villages. This is not one of the town villages. This is, in fact, the strip commercial on Kingstown Road that the comprehensive plans have consistently said need to be carefully managed to not expand and instead rehabilitate this area, which has to be done slowly as each old legacy building is replaced, have it be replaced with something that meets these goals of the comprehensive plan. That takes time. This retail building, is this urban sprawl expansion? That's my question. Policy 6.3, the town supports the existing tourist economy, and the town supports the protection of historic resources, landmarks, scenic landscapes as important component of the tourist economy. This principal arterial road between University of Rhode Island and South Kingstown is what every prospective URI student and their parents drive when they're checking out the town. It's what it has tourist traffic, it has URI traffic, it has town traffic. It is mostly residential from Peacedale Mill Complex to Route 138, except for this commercial strip that we're trying to rehabilitate through the tool of the comprehensive plan. Next, please. Here's an example, a famous example of how Freeport, Maine said to McDonald's, sure, you can build a McDonald's here, but it has to look like it's one of our buildings. So the picture on the left is a McDonald's in Brunswick, Maine, where they didn't specify, and so McDonald's built what they wanted. Here's the building on the right in Freeport, Maine, and that's what it looks like. Next page, please. Oh, wait, go back. Policy 3.4, the town shall promote the highest aesthetic standards for roadway design and visual quality along major roadways, along major roads. So that's a townwide goal, highest aesthetic standard. Next, please. Here's something I made up. There's a Dollar General, brand new one in Fayetteville, either one of those Fayettevilles. I couldn't find which one, but this came off of a Dollar General website. And they love their big signs. And it looks pretty familiar. They want visibility. Our comp plan calls for small town growth, scenic roadways to support tourism, etc. Well, here's an example of a building in Hope Valley. I changed the name to Dollar General. The yellow Dollar General sign is now a little thing over the door, so people will believe that it's actually a Dollar General. That's their brand. But I'm not saying, you know, this is my proposal for what it could look like, but that is indigenous to this area, and that would represent small town character. Next page, please. Kingstown Road Special Management District is shown in the outline, and the property is circled. The red is the strip commercial. The orange are the new MU zones that was specially created for this plan. Everything else is residential, and the residential is growing. There's the South Winds development, the Saugatucket development, which is disconnected. I mean, all around this, it's residential. So this is an example of commercial that's buried in the middle of a lot of residences. This is not out in farmland. And I'm making this point as we move forward. Next. Ensure that state and local projects appropriately consider pedestrian and bicycle safety and circulation needs. Continue to maintain scenic roadways, critical gateways within the town. Encourage design standards for infrastructure improvements regarding pedestrian and bicycle circulation for both on-site facilities and connections to adjoining neighborhoods and villages. Require new developments be designed to increase connectivity to adjoining neighborhoods and villages. Policy 1.3, the town shall facilitate pedestrian improvements throughout the community to encourage walking. Next. The town shall encourage an energy efficient pattern of development which avoids urban sprawl and scattered land development. The town endorses a land use plan having concentration of population and services in a central core area. Road network, and this is not in a central core area, so this could be arguably called urban sprawl, scattered land development. I'm not a planning professional, so I'm leaving that as a question. Define road network capabilities, limitations, establish baseline data to define the capacities, levels of service, limitations for existing road network, both on the campus and for town and state roads. This is a state road that directly connects campus to Wakefield and a lot of student housing that resides in Narragansett and points south. And there's very heavy URI traffic. And that URI traffic was not represented in the traffic study according to the Zoning Board of Review because it was collected in May after spring session was out and summer session had not come in. So a traffic study was conducted when URI was not in session. And that's that. In that case, it underrepresents the traffic that exists for most of the rest of the year, because that month of May is a unique month along with Christmas vacation where the traffic drops way down. You don't have the tourists in the summer and you don't have the students in the winter. There's nobody around. So that's the traffic study. Another thought about the traffic study is Dollar General, like they do across the country, choose from ITE use code 814 variety store with a trips per unit of 6.14. That might be what their business is, but this permit would allow other stores such as Convenience Market, whatever that is, code 852, which has 5 times the traffic. So whether Dollar General is a variety store or a convenience market, I can't say. They're using ITE numbers, not what their sales projections are. They must have internal sales projections that justified their construction of this thing right here. I doubt that Dollar General went to ITE to see what their business would be if they put a store here, because that same code would be used if they put this thing on Ministerial Road. So I would say to the planning board, why not use the highest code of convenience store, convenience market, whatever that is, of 34.57, 5 times the traffic of what the traffic study has. And we don't know. I could not find actual versus projected for Dollar General anywhere in the country. Nobody's studying what actually happened. But who knows? Maybe that is where they want to be with the traffic of a convenience market. Next, please. So my last page is, what would it take? Instead of just saying no, 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 well, I've studied the comprehensive plan extensively. It calls for connections to adjoining neighborhoods. I've updated, I totally made this drawing a lot nicer, but I can't share my screen. That's okay. But what could be done with this design? Well, the architecture of the building could certainly be made to have the scenic small town aesthetic the comp plan describes. In fact, on my computer, I've noticed that there were several towns across the country that required Dollar General to do something that they wanted. And so they're nicer looking buildings and fit. There's one in Connecticut. I forget where the other one is. There's two or three I have on my screen as examples. It's something the company will do. We just have to tell them they have to do it. Our comp plan tells them. It's not my opinion. It's not your opinion. It's written right in our comprehensive plan. The curb cut could be moved to a shared curb cut. You do that by flipping the plan for a shared driveway with the group home to the south. Almost looks like that driveway was designed that way for some reason. And an added benefit of that is moving that curb cut almost twice as far from the gas station. So where it is right now, it's pretty close to South Winds and it's pretty close to the gas station traffic. So you have a second popular store here, cars going in and out, close to the gas station where people exiting the gas station are looking left as they turn right. People exiting South Winds are looking right as they turn left, and then are surprised because a car is exiting Dollar General that was looking right as they turn left and they crash. And these crashes happen. So separating busy curb cuts would be beneficial. And if the curb cut was at the southern end of this property instead of the northern end of the property, that would be a material improvement. The group home has very little traffic, so I don't think combining those two into one actually changes much, because the group home is not the issue, but moving the curb cut of Dollar General twice as far away from the gas station, that matters, because they're only separated by one property at the moment. Walking and bicycle paths. Well, as I showed you before, there's residential everywhere. And this Route 108, as we know, has no shoulders, no sidewalks, and all along Route 108, all the residential is on the other side of the road. So the added sidewalk in front of this property is meaningless, because there aren't people walking from the car dealer or the gas station to Dollar General. Where they are coming from possibly would be Southwind. That's highly dense. There's a footpath through the woods to Peacedale Estates that could be paved. The yellow line shows sidewalk all the way up there that would connect the retirement community. And now you have 3 different communities and some residences, all which are on the other side of the road. They're connected together with sidewalk. And then you put a crosswalk with a signal, because nobody should be crossing that road. And I personally gave first aid to a pedestrian who was hit by a car in front of Howard Johnson's. That woman died on the scene, and none of us were able to resuscitate her. This is my personal experience. There's blood on one of my old jackets. Pedestrians on this road are dangerous. 2 of my children have had car accidents in front of the gas station. The hygienist I saw this morning said, "Oh, I had an accident in front of the gas station." And the traffic study doesn't talk about anything in front of the gas station. It talks about accidents at the intersection at 108 and at the intersection at Curtis Corner Road. And this congestion right here at the gas station, the distance of the curb cuts, I'm not an expert at reading the traffic study. I couldn't find it in there. But it's really important. And so the town, in the comp plan, the town says the town should be doing baseline traffic studies that include growth, the growth of additional plans, the high school that's coming in. There's other residential plans in this area. There's there's a lot going on, and URI is growing every year with even more traffic. So there's a lot going on with traffic, and frankly, it's more than we should expect an applicant to deal with, because these are interrelated with a lot of factors that go beyond the applicant's interest. It's a town interest. And expecting applicants to do a traffic study that really serves our interests, I don't think is appropriate. Our interests are what's the case today? How overloaded is the road today? What's the growth in this area 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What's happening with the residents around here? What are we doing with the state in terms of sidewalks that we've had on tip lists for decades and they won't do because it's expensive? So asking the applicant to do a traffic study that actually tells us what we need is not appropriate, and I'm not so I'm not suggesting that their traffic study is flawed. It's what you'd expect. The only thing that this doesn't really cover is added roadway traffic. This store probably
Mr. Chairman,
is
Mr. Chairman, if I may. This is
Yes,
Jamie
Jamie.
Rabbit, Planning Director. Not to cut, no intent to cut the testimony of this gentleman short, but he's been speaking for
I'm going to call a break at 9:30.
36
So
minutes
all right.
now.
He's on
and
his last
it's
page,
A
Jamie,
little
so-
off topic with regards to traffic circulation in the entire community versus traffic issues associated with this application. So
okay. All right, Jamie Murdoch, we're going to, you're on your last page.
last
Yes.
page. I have 2
Okay.
sentences.
So I think you've made your point to your
Yes.
concerns with this project. And the board normally takes a break at 9 o'clock. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Murdoch.
We'll get started as soon as we get our other two planning board members back. Okay, we have our planning board members back. Looks like the applicant's lawyer is still not with us. There he
Right
is.
here, Mr.
All right, thank you. Joe, did you have any response to Mr. Murdoch's summary or?
Actually, no, I just point out two areas that Mr. Murdoch said on numerous occasions, he's not qualified as a planner, and he is not familiar with traffic studies. And I just want to, I don't want to go line by line over 16 pages, Mr. Chairman, but this does have DOT approval. And we believe it is consistent with the town of South Kingstown's comprehensive use plan. And I will provide a planning expert at the zoning board. This is only for an advisory opinion this evening. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Board member comments? Joe? I'm sorry, Paul.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Paul Jordan. I just want to thank Mr. Murdoch for putting so much time and effort into thinking about this. He did raise one point, which, being new to the planning board, I'm sort of asking other members about. But, what was the planning board or previous planning boards thinking about the special management district and what was appropriate there? And also, this point about it being an expansion of the commercial strip. It certainly seems to me that that's exactly what it is. I mean, we can make it look nice. I think they've done a really nice job putting the parking in the back and thinking about the landscaping plan. The architecture, I think we obviously can't require anything there. I think it could use some work. But the real question is this an expansion of the commercial strip in the area? And is that what was planned for the special management district? And again, the questions that I have aren't really comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that, and I mean, the special management district does lay out this area as non-residential for other uses. And by laying out and identifying that area, to me, my mind is that it's identify the area where it'll allow this commercial or retail development and controls it to that area to avoid sprawl all along Route 108. But, and I would agree with you on the architecture could be something other than a metal building, but we don't have architectural standards. Maria, you look like you're ready to.
Like yourself and Joe, I do appreciate Mr. Murdoch's efforts and attention to detail. One of the things that we have found as a board is that having a collaborative process usually results in a better design and makes everyone happier in the long run. And as board members know, this area has been the site of a considerable amount of development in recent months. We always have these conversations about cumulative impact, and I think that's valid, but it doesn't necessarily apply to this particular application by itself or any other one. That is something that, as staff knows, I'm always nagging them to, we need to talk about the impact, and particularly since this is a URI corridor, but that's a conversation for another time. We do strive, as Mr. Murdoch mentioned, for the highest standards of development plan review. And I think he is correct in his assessment that this is a special management district. And all of the new construction has been of a higher standard than previous parcels with regard to commercial in general. And some board members will recall we had Dan's Restaurant come in, which was, even though they're not specifically regulated, we had conversations with them that resulted in a better design, even though it was ultimately not constructed. The same goes for the apartments that we recently approved. Again, having constructive conversations is a good thing. I've already addressed landscaping. I think that signage and architecture is something that could be modified, and certainly Jamie Rabbit, our Director of Planning, is a keen follower of architecture, has a considerable amount of experience with regard to architecture, and often comes up with some very nice ideas for modifications that result in better projects. So I would certainly like to hear from Jamie if he doesn't mind saying so.
Maria, before we bring Jamie in, can we just hear from the rest of the board members and then we'll let staff? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I had a similar comment. I mean, Mr. Murdoch brought up some excellent points and certainly was impressed with the example that of McDonald's and Freeport. But maybe not going to that extreme. I'd be interested in ways to soften the appearance and make it more fitting, even if it's the same size building and the same interior of the building, but if there's ways we could soften the outside.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Susan?
Hi, thank you. I would echo what others have said. Thank you, Mr. Murdoch, for an excellent presentation, and you've made some excellent points. I'm hearing his point that we created a special management district because I think we were concerned about an extension of the linear strip that's down 108 right now. And right now, if you drive down Route 108, it's not very nice. And I appreciate his effort in showing us the McDonald's in Massachusetts and the effort that was made by McDonald's to fit into the community. And it does say in our comp plan to prevent the formation of a linear commercial strip in favor of mixed use development that permits limited commercial uses. And if we indeed meant what we said in our comp plan, then, you know, the pedals to the metal, it's time to show that that's indeed what we implied, and those words aren't just words on paper. And this would be an extension of the gas station, the used car lot, and then this retail store is just a commercial linear strip, which we've deliberately said we don't want to see on this Route 108 special management district. And if indeed this retail location, if we approve this, I think that they could put in some effort into making it fit also in our comp plan, our desire to maintain a small town character. This is a main artery through our town, and this will be, I think, a very heavily used business on a commercial strip. And I think Mr. Murdoch's points were very well taken. We need a higher standard of development for this project in our town.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Pam or Peter have a comment? No?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pam.
Sorry. Thank you again for your research and your sharing it. I know that we talked a lot about the last time the traffic issues. And however, I think in the end of the day, we felt that given the evidence that we had and the decisions that we needed to make were acceptable. I mean, so I'm just trying to, because the concerns of the traffic, if somebody could remind me of some of the mitigations that, or some of the information that was provided in that then we decided would be appropriate at this point. So the traffic is, I guess I'm just asking our planning staff or the consulting team to just briefly remind us of the traffic issues, because as he pointed out, some of the studies were done not at the peak time of traffic.
But either way, and Matthew, maybe you can elaborate. This is Rich Brevenet. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit, Matthew, but I thought that the development as it was proposed, based on the square footage, pushed the traffic light at Curtis Corner and 108 to an F during a certain period. Is that correct? Went from a D to an F?
No, it's not. We did do a full-blown traffic impact study that was submitted as part of this application. The conclusion of that was that the minor increase in traffic that would be generated from this retail development would be handled and adequate from the existing roadway. And as everyone, I'm assuming, is aware, they evaluate intersections and roadway adequacy by a term called level of service, which is the delay time it takes to perform a certain movement. There are several charts in our traffic impact study that do detail the level of service. There are slight reductions of 1 to 2 seconds in some of those, but all of them are level A, B, C. I'm just skimming them right now. So, and no dramatic reductions, nothing from F that I can see, Rich. But if you know otherwise, I'm happy to relook at it. But yes, it was provided as part of the application, was re-reviewed, and the member from the public, I can't remember his name's presentation, was a reiteration of what we discussed before. But again, this was reviewed by Rhode Island DOT and
approved.
And it complies with the standards of a industry standard in terms of performing a traffic impact analysis. And does not show any negative impacts to the roadway network.
Thank you, Matt. Did you have anything else to add, Rich?
No, then I'm mistaken. I mean, I could have sworn that we went from a D to an F on the, it was 108 South, but
Rich, it's page 20 on our traffic impact study, if you have it.
has this been revised as part of this newer application?
It has not. There's no change in square footage. And obviously, as everyone.
This says May of 2019.
Right, and as everyone is aware, COVID traffic levels have dropped below their normal average, so.
Then again, then I'm mistaken. I mean, again, we only got this last week, I guess, but so it's a little difficult to kind of keep track of what's been changing, but.
No problem.
All right, Jamie, I didn't mean to interrupt you before, but Jamie Rabbit.
Oh, not at all. Don't worry, Mr. Chairman. I work at the board's pleasure. Just with regards from administrative side, I know the staff handed or sent out a draft motion associated with this application. That motion in essence is the framework for a discussion, which I think is being undertaken this evening. Given the testimony tonight and some of the issues that the board has brought up, are going to be my recommendation to continue this to your next regularly scheduled meeting and allow staff to sit down with the applicant and review some of the items that were talked about this evening. Before I would like to do that, I'd like to just, as Maria Mack has mentioned this evening, have a brief discussion on architecture. I know in the preliminary statements made by the applicant's attorney, they're happy to be in South Kingston, happy to be an applicant, and are working hard to receive favorable approval from the planning board. But with that being said, I'm a little concerned that the architecture that they propose for South Kingstown is less than they have offered other communities. The firm of BKA out of the Boston area is extremely capable, and they have done some nicer buildings, both on the commercial side for retail, as well as specifically for Dollar General. So, you know, I would encourage them to look at their portfolio and listen to what the planning board has stated and conversed and tried to articulate with them with regards to the special management district, and revise their architecture to be more in keeping with the goals and objectives of the town's 2016 comprehensive community plan, as well as some of the other items the community has been discussing with regards to design. I know there is a representative here from BKA. I'm not going to put him on the spot and tell him where he's done general. I'm sure he's aware of where his firm has, as well as Dollar General's representative. And again, it's just concerning when they've done, you know, a better store and they're not offering that to you. And if that's the negotiation aspect, that we're going to give you a C style store and settle with the A minus, you know, I think that's difficult. But I'll stop there. I do have a whole portfolio of Dollar General stores. I've had them for years. I've tracked the development of one of the fastest growing retail entities in the country, along with Dollar Tree and the other dollar type stores. But again, I think there's room for improvement to try and meet and articulate the goals and objectives of the special management district as it relates to landscaping, building style, massing, impervious pavement, buffering. To Maria Mac's point, I think the planning board is getting adverse to abrevieties as a street tree to try and screen. Now, from my perspective, I'll challenge the architect. Let's not use landscaping to screen a ugly building. Let's build a better building and actually celebrate it and show it off. Again, that to me, that's the challenge of the architect. I don't need a row of abrevieties to hide an attractive building. I need a row of abrevieties basically that admits that my building isn't very attractive. And I'm going to help the community so they don't have to see it. I think there are opportunities working with BKA to work on that architecture and articulate some of the goals and objectives, again, of the district.
Jamie, do you have anything in that portfolio to help on the loading dock area?
Again, it's a little bit back of house. There are things that you can do on the landscape perspective. I think one of the goals and objectives that the board has articulated to me is that from a passing vehicle, or in essence, someone from the sidewalk walking by, should have more of a street appearance, whether it's street trees and a split rail fence along the streetscape, but also that loading dock, I shouldn't be able to look into the site and see, in essence, what is a cul-de-sac for a 20-lot subdivision at the back of house. That with some earthen mounding and some moderate 3 to 4 foot high landscaping, we can screen that from the street as well as the abutting property. Again, it's a turning radius and an objective of the applicant to not have to back up a 67-foot tractor trailer. But if you look at the turning radiuses, there's also some opportunity within that turning radius to either do impervious landscaping or impervious material that will also help them with water quality and help them with their stormwater management issues. With regards to the curb cut, I think Rich has made a good point that although it's a 24-foot wide entry aisle that widens out to close to 100 feet, the turning radiuses are in essence, which are for the trailer part of the tractor trailer to in essence cut across. Again, use techniques of street print and other cobblestone type materials to show that it's not part of the sidewalk. It's not meant for the pedestrian to be on, but it's resilient to the impacts of a tractor trailer needing it in order to make that turning radius, but not making it look like a 100-foot wide curb cut. To work on the material side to really articulate that it's a narrow 24-foot wide entry, and there are other pavement treatments associated with the turning radiuses. But I think I've been successful in the past, and I'm sure BL companies that I've worked with before. I haven't worked with Matthew, but I've worked with John Mancini on a number of projects, and I know they have the portfolio also and the techniques to better articulate that entrance and not make it so prominent.
Okay, great. Applicant have any final comments to?
I'd like to get a copy of that 17-page report. I saw it tonight for the first time on your screen, and I'd like to get a copy of it so I can be prepared to go refute it point by point as we move forward through this process.
If the applicant could email me.
I think Jamie has it.
On the town's webpage.
Jay has it.
I have been emailing your department.
Okay, we will get that to you.
Okay.
Mr. Shikachi, I'll email that to you right now.
And does the town, I'm hearing all about these architectural features, but does the town of South Kingstown have architectural guidelines? Do you have architectural design review? Is it somewhere in writing somewhere?
To the applicant's attorney's point, the town does not have specific design guidelines. They fall within the nomenclature of the special management district, and it's articulated through the vision of that district.
So it's a little bit, it's not easy to find. We have to like go hunt for it, and it's a very subjective type of guideline, I guess. It's not written out anywhere.
Staff can, if the board sees fit, staff can guide you through that process.
Would that be better to be addressed at the zoning board level or come back here to the planning board level?
I think the planning board is attempting to articulate finding that you're consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as well as the special management district.
And the zoning
would
board is
also
gonna
add-
look at the use. We're gonna look at the design of in the layout of the building. So they
Yes,
pretty
having
much
a-
take our recommendation. I'm sorry.
Right.
Maria.
That's okay. Having a positive, a highly positive recommendation from the planning board with regard to development plan review will make their job easier.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, my name is Doug Gruner, and I'm with BK Architects, the architect of record. We've heard your comments tonight, and we are going to go back and come back with a softer design for your review the next time.
We appreciate that.
No problem.
I know you've worked with Bill Mulholland.
Yes.
He's our number one fan, Jamie.
Good old friend. He still owes me a stake at the on Capitol Hill.
I know Mr. Mulholland for 20 plus years, so I know what you went through there, but we
Federal Hill, I'm sorry.
share portfolios.
Yep.
So if no one has anything further to add, we'll continue this to March, was it 23rd? 2021.
I'll make that
Would a
motion.
motion be appropriate?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I was going to entertain a motion. Maria has made the motion.
I'll
Do I have a
second that.
second? I have a second from Pam. Pam, take the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Steve Tomasi,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Susan Axelrod.
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Paul Jordan.
Aye.
And Pam Rubinoff, aye.
The motion passes unanimously. We'll see you on the 23rd. Thank you for your time tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. We have any reports from staff or?
Just a quick update on the comprehensive community plan. We have made all the edits associated with the language and text. We're now just going through pagination and putting a final staple in the document and getting it to town council. So we anticipate wrapping that up this week.
Okay, that's great news. So, all right, Amy, you have anything to add?
Nothing on my end.
Okay, great. Jay, do you need a TRC volunteer?
Yes, that would be for March 10th.
I'll do it. I haven't done it in a while.
Okay, and we got Paul on the hook for the next time because he got his hand up too. So, okay. Having
And
said-
question, Jay, could you just send us a little reminder of what we have meeting wise for March? I'm just getting paranoid now that, extra meetings that aren't necessarily on my internal clock calendar, and want to make sure that we know well in advance if we have anything special going on.
Yeah, at this point, there's only one special meeting. I believe that's March 11th. Your work session is on the 9th and regular meeting on the 23rd.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
By Maria, second. By Paul, all in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
I guess.